Syria's sovereignty and independence should be upheld. His comments came during a meeting in Beijing with a top advisor for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. CGTN's Han Peng has more about the peace process.
So we have seen many peace talks in Syria, but all of them failed in the past. But next Tuesday, there will be another one. Whenever we're talking about peace talks, it's always important for all sides to make compromises.
True.
Is Syria ready to make any more compromises than before to make sure that this time it will be successful?
Well, first of all, we can't say that all talks have failed because there were some good results out of Astana. We had reduced escalation areas in Syria. And the Syrian government, since the beginning of every political attempt, had been pragmatic and had been forthcoming. In fact, it was the other side who is neither united nor ready nor able to do anything about political settlement in Syria.
For 6 years, the Syrian government forces have been fighting the rebel forces. How will the Syrian government treat these group of people when we have seen that the government forces now seems to win one victory after another?
Well, if I may correct your question, the Syrian government has been fighting terrorism. At the beginning of the war, all what we have been fighting is ISIL and Nusra and all terrorist groups who had been brought into our countries by regional and international powers in order to destroy our country. With the liberation of al-Bukamal, which happened 2-3 days ago, we can announce that terrorism is defeated, although there are some pockets which need to be also cleansed out of Syria.
So if you name the rebel forces as the terrorists, it means that the Syrian government is not ready to make any compromise on a peace talk with them, right?
No, that's not true. Those who are coming to talk in Astana or in Geneva are not the terrorists. There is a difference between people who are ready to lay down their arms and work with the governments, and we have negotiated with many of these people in many areas in Syria and reached reconciliation between the government, between the Syrian people and these forces. But there's a difference between these forces and the terrorist groups who are either from ISIL or from Nusra or Ahrar Sham or Hayat Tahrir Sham or whatever. There are many names. There are tens of names. That's what Russia asked the United States to do since 2012, to separate between people who carried arms for one reason or another and terrorists who came from all corners of the world in order to destroy our institutions and our country. But of course, the United States didn't do that.
We have seen this 6-year-long bloody civil war in Syria, and it's very
not
tragic.
A civil war, excuse me. That what has happened in Syria is not a civil war. The fact that Western media calls it civil war in order to exonerate themselves from the responsibility of supporting terrorism in Syria.
So that's exactly the question that I was trying to ask.
Yeah.
Because many people call this a proxy war between either Russia or the United States or between Saudi Arabia and Iran. What is your assessment of the role of the Syrian Assad's government in this war? Do you think that Assad is a puppet of Russia, as some Western media would call, or the Syrian government is actually a victim of this proxy war, or the government is actually a winner of this long-standing bloodshed?
First of all, the Russian air forces did not come to Syria until the 30th of September 1915, which means that we had been fighting a war against terrorism for 4 years before the Russians came to help us. And second, the Russians and the Iranians and Hezbollah and anybody who is fighting with the Syrian government are fighting out of the conviction that this terrorism is absolutely dangerous for the entire world. And so Assad is a hero because he stood his ground, he stood with his people, he fought terrorism, he coordinated his efforts with any ally who is coming to Syria.
So you're calling President Assad a hero, while the Western media is calling him a criminal that is causing so many humanitarian crises in Syria. How do you look at this diametrically opposed comment of your leader?
Well, the Western media, as you know, 99% of all information in the world originates in the United States. All what the United States cares about is about Israel and about the Zionist entity in the region. We don't take our evaluation either of our president or of our country from our enemies or from people who are targeting us. Let the Western media say whatever it likes. It said at the beginning of the crisis many things that have proven to be absolutely false. Look what they did in Libya. Look what they did in Iraq. I mean, if we read their history and when they talked about, we find that what they say is irrelevant to what they do.